War has always been a game of strategy, power, and sometimes sheer luck. The United States, one of the world's most formidable military powers, has been victorious in many battles. However, even the mightiest have faced defeat. Today, we dive deep into American history to uncover 6 shocking military defeats that left a mark on the nation's history. From the vast plains of Montana to the deserts of Tunisia, these battles not only changed the course of conflicts but also offered valuable lessons in warfare. Stay tuned as we unravel the stories behind these dramatic defeats, starting with the infamous Battle of the Little Bighorn. Battle of the Little Bighorn, 1876. The Battle of the Little Bighorn, also known as Custer's Last Stand, remains one of the most legendary and controversial defeats in American military history. This battle, fought on June 25, 1876, was a part of the Great Sioux War. It was a clash between the 7th Cavalry of the United States Army, led by Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer, and an alliance of Lakota Sioux, Northern Cheyenne, and Arapaho tribes, led by Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, and other prominent Native American leaders. Custer, renowned for his boldness, made a fatal mistake by underestimating the strength and resolve of the Native American forces. Despite warnings, he split his forces, hoping to surround and defeat the encampment. But instead of facing a small, disorganized band of warriors, Custer and his men encountered over 2,000 fierce and determined fighters. The result? A devastating and complete defeat for Custer and his men. The 7th Cavalry was wiped out to the last man under Custer's direct command, and the news of the defeat shocked the nation. This battle was a reminder that arrogance and underestimation of the enemy can lead to disastrous consequences. The defeat also marked a significant victory for the Native American tribes, but it was short-lived, as it only intensified the U.S. military's efforts to subdue them. Battle of Kasserine Pass, 1943. Next, we fast-forward to World War II, where the American military faced its first major defeat on the European continent during the Battle of Kasserine Pass. This battle, fought in February 1943, was a brutal wake-up call for the inexperienced American troops stationed in North Africa. The Kasserine Pass, a 2-mile wide gap in the Atlas Mountains in Tunisia, became the site of a fierce confrontation between the Allied forces, primarily composed of American troops, and the Axis forces led by the seasoned German Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, also known as the Desert Fox. Rommel's tactics were brilliant and ruthless. Utilizing a combination of tanks, artillery, and infantry, the German forces launched a surprise attack on the American positions. The U.S. troops, many of whom were fresh recruits, were unprepared for the ferocity of the assault. Confusion, poor communication, and a lack of experience led to chaos on the battlefield. The Americans suffered heavy casualties, with over 250 killed, 3,000 wounded, and 3,000 missing. The defeat at Kasserine Pass exposed significant flaws in the U.S. military strategy and command structure. It was a harsh lesson that led to significant changes in leadership, tactics, and training, ultimately contributing to the success of the Allies in later stages of the war. But at that moment, Kasserine Pass was a shocking and humbling defeat for the American forces. Battle of Mogadishu, 1993. The Battle of Mogadishu, also known as the Black Hawk Down Incident, is a stark reminder of the complexities and dangers of modern urban warfare. This battle took place on October 3 to 4, 1993, in the capital of Somalia, Mogadishu. It was part of Operation Gothic Serpent, a mission aimed at capturing the warlord Mohammed Farah, whose forces had been causing chaos and humanitarian crises in the region. The operation seemed straightforward: send in a small team of elite U.S. soldiers to capture key lieutenants of Aidid and withdraw quickly. However, things went horribly wrong. As the mission unfolded, 2 Black Hawk helicopters were shot down by Somali militia using rocket-propelled grenades. The crash sites became the focal point of an intense and prolonged firefight between the outnumbered American forces and thousands of heavily armed Somali fighters. The situation rapidly deteriorated into a desperate battle for survival. American soldiers found themselves trapped in a hostile city, surrounded by a sea of enemies. Despite their superior training and equipment, the U.S. forces suffered significant losses. 18 American soldiers were killed, and over 70 were wounded. The images of American bodies being dragged through the streets of Mogadishu shocked the world and led to widespread criticism of the mission and its planning. The Battle of Mogadishu highlighted the unpredictability and dangers of urban warfare, especially in regions where the U.S. military might not have a clear understanding of the local dynamics. The defeat also led to a re-evaluation of U.S. involvement in international conflicts, particularly in situations where the objectives and exit strategies were not well defined. Battle of Bunker Hill, 1775. The Battle of Bunker Hill, fought on June 17, 1775, during the American Revolutionary War, is often remembered as a Pyrrhic victory for the British, but it was also a significant defeat for the American forces. This battle took place on the Charlestown Peninsula, overlooking Boston, and was one of the first major engagements between British troops and American colonial forces. The American forces, composed mainly of untrained and poorly equipped militia, fortified Breed's Hill, mistakenly thinking it was Bunker Hill. Despite their lack of experience, they managed to build strong defensive positions overnight, which surprised the British. However, the Americans were critically short on ammunition and supplies. When the British launched their assault, the American forces managed to repel 2 waves of attacks with disciplined volleys of musket fire. But by the third assault, the Americans had run out of ammunition and were forced to retreat. The British finally took the hill, but at a tremendous cost. Over 1,000 of their soldiers were killed or wounded, compared to about 450 American casualties. Although the British technically won the battle, the heavy losses they sustained were a strategic blow, and the battle proved that the American forces could stand up to the British regulars. However, for the Americans, it was a sobering defeat, as it demonstrated the challenges they would face in terms of resources and manpower in the fight for independence. Battle of the Washington Bridge, 1776. The Battle of the Washington Bridge, also known as the Battle of Fort Washington, was another significant defeat for the American forces during the Revolutionary War. This battle occurred on November 16, 1776, when British and Hessian forces launched an assault on Fort Washington, located on the northern tip of Manhattan Island. General George Washington had left a garrison of about 3,000 men at the fort, under the command of Colonel Robert Magaw, with orders to defend it at all costs. However, the fort was ill-prepared for a prolonged siege, and its strategic value was questionable. When the British forces, commanded by General William Howe, attacked, they quickly overwhelmed the American defenders. The fort fell in a matter of hours, and the American forces suffered heavy losses, with nearly 3,000 soldiers captured. The defeat at Fort Washington was a significant blow to the American cause, as it effectively ended the Continental Army's control of Manhattan and gave the British full control of New York City. The loss also dealt a severe blow to American morale and forced Washington to adopt a more cautious and defensive strategy for the rest of the war. Battle of Fort Wagner, 1863. The Battle of Fort Wagner, fought on July 18, 1863, during the American Civil War, is a poignant example of a defeat that became a symbol of courage and sacrifice. This battle took place on Morris Island, South Carolina, and was part of the Union's efforts to capture the Confederate stronghold of Charleston. The Union forces, under the command of Brigadier General Quincy Gilmore, aimed to seize Fort Wagner, a heavily fortified Confederate position guarding the southern approach to Charleston Harbor. The assault was led by the 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment, one of the first African-American units in the Union Army, commanded by Colonel Robert Gould Shaw. Despite the regiment's determination and bravery, the attack was a disaster. The Union soldiers faced withering fire from the Confederate defenders as they charged across open ground toward the fort. The 54th Massachusetts suffered devastating losses, with Colonel Shaw and nearly half of his regiment killed in the assault. The Union forces were unable to breach the fort's defenses and were forced to retreat. The Battle of Fort Wagner was a tactical defeat for the Union, but it had a profound impact on the Civil War and American history. The bravery of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment became a rallying point for the abolitionist cause and helped to change public perception of African American soldiers. Their sacrifice demonstrated that they were not only willing but capable of fighting and dying for the Union and the cause of freedom. These 6 battles, each in their own way, were shocking defeats for the American military. They serve as reminders that even the most powerful and well-equipped forces can be brought low by underestimating their enemies, poor planning, or simply the chaos of war. Yet, from each of these defeats, valuable lessons were learned, lessons that would shape the future of the American military and, in some cases, change the course of history. As we reflect on these moments of defeat, it's important to remember the courage and sacrifice of those who fought in these battles. Whether they were soldiers defending their homeland, inexperienced recruits thrown into the fire, or men fighting for their freedom and their rights. These defeats, though painful, were part of the journey toward building a stronger, more resilient nation. Thank you for joining us on this journey through some of the most shocking American military defeats in history. If you found this video informative and intriguing, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the moments that shaped our world. And as always, we welcome your thoughts and comments below. What other military defeats or victories would you like us to explore in future videos? Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.